Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, May 29th, 2025. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Taylor Lorenz will be with us, tech journalist, to talk about some of her work, including this piece that I loved recently about how 2020, COVID, etc., changed our politics forever. Also on the program, a federal trade court panel rules that Trump cannot implement tariffs unilaterally using an emergency authority, which prompts a stock market rebound. U.S. GDP shrank by 0.2% in the first quarter of 2025, the first contraction in 3 years. Consumer spending is also at its weakest in 3 years. Are Elon and Trump breaking up? Musk leaves D.C. with an $100 million IOU for Trump's super PACs that he's yet to make good on.
Stephen Miller's wife with him?
Elon's a little peeved that Sam Altman and David Sachs got an AI deal with the UAE that Trump brokered. Isn't that because it's enriching his kids? Or is that the other corrupt deal? I can't keep track. Trump... Oh, no, it's Witkoff's son that's working with Eric on the AI thing, right?
I've not heard.
I gotta put a pin in that, folks. Trump demands that any deal with Iran would allow the U.S. to destroy, quote, whatever we want of its nuclear sites, which sounds like a poison pill to me. Rubio targets the visas of hundreds of thousands of Chinese students learning in the United States.
Despicable.
Jamie Raskin, the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee, opens an investigation into Trump's pay-to-play meme coin dinner. RFK Jr.'s Maha report cites a study on anxiety meds and antidepressants that does not exist.
Wonder how that happened.
At
If it
least,
has anything to do with AI, or already mentioned.
right. Oh, God, we're doing health policy with AI slop?
Of course, you could expect them to do actual research.
Oh, yeah. He also, by the way, RFK, canceled a $600 million Moderna contract that was developing a bird flu vaccine. Polling on the abundance agenda versus taxing the rich spells some bad things for the abundance libs. Turns out people like the taxing the rich part more. What do you know?
No, tell us more about bottlenecks.
We're gonna bottleneck our way to the White House in 2028.
More like pencil neck.
Wired reports that U.S. Customs and Border Patrol is collecting the biometric data of tens of thousands of migrant children. Seems pretty bad. And lastly, at least 4 Palestinians were killed at an aid distribution site in Gaza. Tens more killed in strikes on, refugee camps as well. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody. It's an M-Majority Report Thursday. I'm very excited to talk to Taylor Lorenz, who is a buddy of mine. We haven't, I feel like, had a conversation on the Majority Report before, so felt this was a great opportunity to bring her on. People should check out her YouTube channel and podcast, but we'll get into that with her in just a bit. Hello, Russ. Hello, Matt.
Hi, yeah, you're saying that thing about the biometric data, and I just want to do a quick plug. I had Alex Skopik on to talk about this piece on Left Reckoning a while ago. But Nazis on Aisle 9, it goes into corporate collaboration with the Hitler's Nazi regime. It goes far beyond IBM, but that's the important point is it's not ICE or DHS that's designing the systems to capture all this biometric data. It's people like Palantir and these private contractors. And we act like we learned some sort of lesson from IBM got shamed for that. All these companies kind of got off scot-free,
right?
For participating in one of the worst crimes of the 20th century, and now they're participating in 21st century crimes.
I mean, what about the cars that are on our roads that got off pretty scot-free for being Volkswagen? What, Mercedes-Benz too? Yep. Collaborators with the Nazis. We have modern day collaborators in this current time. You could see our tech overlords and say the, as Matt says, like Palantir and the AI weapons technology that's being used by, say, the Israeli military right now. One of their programs, Daddy's Home, which says if they've sort of identified a male that may be a Hamas militant, we're going to use this AI program to kill dozens of people in the house or the apartment complex regardless.
Microsoft employees saying emails with Gaza, Palestine, or genocide won't send. And remember all this stuff about, you have to be the best and the brightest to work at these places. Well, they got a lot of these great people, and now they're suppressing them from exercising their conscience.
But in more or less dystopian news, or at least we can kind of have a party as the world burns, just a momentary respite. Donald Trump yesterday was dealt a significant blow to his unilateral tariff policy. The U.S. Court of International Trade ruled via a 3-judge panel that included one Reagan, one Trump, and one Obama judge on it. Obviously, all communists, right? We're all in agreement?
The far left, yeah.
Okay. And the Antifa panel ruled that basically his invocation of this unilateral tariff policy, quote, exceeds any authority granted under the emergency powers law that he's using. This is significant because he has used the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which is a 1977 law, to invoke a majority of his tariffs, like the unilateral ones from Liberation Day, essentially. That's the 25% duties on Canadian and Mexican products that he imposed, the 20% tariff on Chinese products, which he says is because of a fentanyl emergency. This is the same authority, I believe, that he used for both Canada and Mexico, because
also supposedly about fentanyl.
Right. We know that a great majority of our fentanyl comes through legal ports of entry, but he has to, much like his invocation of the Alien Enemies Act to round up and deport people, he has to use emergency declarations to justify any of these actions, and his tariff policy was based on that same kind of framework and a battle plan, if you will, by his administration, and so the statute that he was using requires a national emergency to be declared. And that was part of what this 3-judge panel was incredibly skeptical of, the idea that he has the authority to do this. And now you see Republicans crying about this. I saw Charlie Kirk was very upset that, no, he does have the authority. He does. They're all leftist losers or whatever. He can use it under the Trade Expansion Act of 1962. This ruling does not nullify those tariffs, but those tariffs are a lot more narrow because they have to be imposed, one, on national security grounds. It's not an emergency declaration. 2, these are the tariffs that he implemented in March, the ones on steel and aluminum that are more directed towards the auto industry. That has to be implemented after there's been an investigation. And it's a slower process. You have to investigate whether or not this is the right thing to do. There's a lot of paperwork. You have to conduct a national security review. And you also have to solicit public comment to use that particular law to implement tariffs, the 1962 Trade Expansion Act. Trump doesn't want to do that, right? Like the immigration stuff, like the tariff stuff, all of his power is he's attempting to utilize it in the way that cements his authority and expands his power as the executive. So not using the checks and balances that are both in the statute, but are also constitutionally written for the executive branch, he's attempting to supersede those. And in part, he likes the tariffs just because he's insane and the immigration stuff. But there's the other part of like him testing those bounds in and of itself is an end that he's trying to achieve.
We're in a state of exception. Tim Pool said, some academics said we're in 7th generation of warfare, and Canada's flooding us with fentanyl. And until you do it, we're going to tax your lumber. Yeah.
David Dayen wrote a good piece about that this morning, and he was saying, like, yeah, the president does have the authority technically, presidents don't have the authority from the Constitution to impose tariffs, but basically for around 100 years, Congress has allowed the president to do so.
Deferred to the executive. Same way like Obama got trade TPA status to do the Trans-Pacific Partnership in his final years. Like, Congress has been fine. You can do this until like someone insane gets in there, right? That starts messing up stuff for their donors.
Yes, and so, but to put it even more succinctly, like Dayen said, he has broad authority to do this based on what you're saying, Matt. But Trump just used the illegal one because the point is trying to cement his power, expand the power of the executive, make himself more like a dictator than like a traditional president. This is the unitary executive theory, and he chose the illegal course of action for that reason. And so now he's throwing a fit. He was upset about this. The White House has petitioned the court, and they want to try to continue to use this authority to impose tariffs. We'll see what the Supreme Court does. But since it was unanimous and, I don't know, I felt like the ruling was pretty bulletproof. We'll see how the Supreme Court responds. Like, they also represent capital, and capitalists are not happy about the tariffs.
Which is like kind of the big problem for them.
Right. But it's bad for all of us, right?
Yeah.
So we're in it with them in this narrow instance. Here's Trump being asked about how Wall Street has been speaking about him and his tariff policy, and he gets really pissed off. Apparently, the Financial Times coined this acronym called TACO, which stands for Trump Always Chickens Out. And a reporter asked him about this.
Wall Street analysts have coined a new term called the taco trade. They're saying Trump always chickens out on your tariff threats, and that's why markets are higher this week. What's your response to that?
I kick out?
Chicken out.
Oh, isn't that nice? Chicken out. I've never heard that. You mean because I reduced China from 145% that I set down to 100 and then down to another number? And I said you have to open up your whole country, and because I gave the European Union a 50% tax tariff, and they called up and they said, please, let's meet right now. Please, let's meet right now. And I said, okay, I'll give you till July 9. I actually asked them, I said, what's the date? Because they weren't willing to meet. And after I did what I did, they said, we'll meet anytime you want. And we have an end date of July 9th. You call that chickening out? Because we have $14 trillion now invested, committed to investing when Biden didn't have practically anything. This country was dying. You know, we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. I went to Saudi Arabia. The king told me. He said, you got the hottest we have the hottest country in the world right now.
What?
6 months ago, this country was stone
so
cold
hot.
dead.
Okay, I'm
We
sorry.
had a dead country. We had a country people didn't think it was.
That's like pretty much the opposite. You could just read actually the Financial Times, who coined taco. Trump always chickens out, which dangerous coinage, I think. But the FT was talking about the economy during Biden's lame duck period as the envy of the entire world. Everyone else, Europe was struggling. Everyone was putting money into American companies because they expected Trump to get in and basically just allow massive amounts of mergers and acquisitions. And instead, what he did is blow up the economy with these stupid tariffs.
Yeah.
But American economy was roaring. Look at any financial press in Biden's lame duck period, and it was crushing.
And it doesn't mean that like people's
Rent was available.
Right, rent is as high as it's ever been. We just hit a record of credit card debt. People are student loan defaults are just restarting on people's credit scores. Like for everyday people, the economy was a bit of a paper tiger, right? Or whatever I don't know. But the tiger sounds more aggressive, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like
it's a speculator's economy.
Yes.
Yeah.
But for their metrics, for the metrics of the ruling class, it was undoubtedly in a much better situation under the Biden administration. And it's a direct result of these tariffs. U.S. GDP, I headline this, shrank for the first time in 3 years since the first quarter of 2022, which was when we were still recovering from COVID. It had been expanding since then. Consumer spending is also at its weakest since this period. So he's just lying. But I don't know. We should try to use Trump always chickens out. Like Trump always chickens out on not sending arms to Israel. He always chickens out on blocking arms to Israel.
That is an interesting
stop chickening out on sanctioning Israel.
I was telling Russ, it kind of worries me because it's kind of like when Chris Murphy was like, actually, he's not even deported that many people. Like, you're challenging him to do the actual thing we don't want him to do. But, okay, fine. If we can make it about chickening out of standing up to Bibi Netanyahu.
Yes.
Fine. Then we can do it.
All right, keep going. I should note also that Janine Pirro is standing right behind him.
Pretty still, too.
Her Honor.
Her Honor, the judge.
You know, we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. I went to Saudi Arabia. The king told me.
Let's talk about temperature.
He said, "You got the hottest. We have the hottest country in the world right now. 6 months ago, this country was stone cold dead. We had a dead country. We had a country people didn't think it was going to survive. And you ask a nasty question like that. It's called
Female
negotiation.
Reporter.
You set a number, and if you go down, if I set a number at a ridiculous high number, and I go down a little bit, a little bit." They want me to hold that number, 145% tariff. Even I said, man, that really got up. You know how it got? Because of fentanyl and many other things. And you added it up.
I'm lying about.
I said, where are we now? We're at 145%. I said, whoa, that's high. That's high. They were doing no business.
You're in charge.
And they were having a lot of problems. We were very nice to China. I don't know if they're going to be nice to us, but we were very nice to China. And in many ways, I think we really helped China tremendously because, they were having great difficulty because we were basically going cold turkey with China. We were doing no business because of the tariff, because it was so high.
Yeah.
But I knew that. But don't ever say what you said. That's a nasty question. Go ahead.
Don't ever say I chicken out.
First of all, how dare you?
First of all, come on. I'm actually now I'm even more convinced that we need to make taco into something more productive.
It's dangerous because not only does it call Trump basically a wimp, but it's also sort of Mexican culture, which is going to aggravate his racism.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I feel like I don't know, if we come back and it's 200% tariffs on everyone in the entire world next week, I guess we have to thank the FT.
Yeah, although he does like Taco Bell, although probably not as much as McDonald's. But,
yeah, no.
In any event,
the best is yet to come.
God did that. I believe that.
I totally believe that.
I totally believe in God. All right, in a moment, we'll be speaking to Taylor Lorenz, but first, a word from some of our sponsors. You know that going online without ExpressVPN is like leaving your blinds open at night. Anybody can watch what you're doing, and you have no idea who might be out there lurking in the dark. Thanks to ExpressVPN for supporting the Majority Report. That goes on for a while. Visit expressvpn.com/majority and you can get an extra 4 months free because all of your traffic flows through their servers. Internet service providers and mobile network providers know every single website you visit. And in the US, ISPs are legally allowed to sell that information to advertisers. That is not good. ExpressVPN.
Cool system.
Yeah, not great. We should probably regulate that, but for now we have ExpressVPN.
How dare you?
which reroutes 100% of your traffic through secure encrypted servers so your ISP can't see your browsing history. It hides your IP address, making it extremely difficult for third parties to track your online activity. It's easy to use. You just fire up the app and click one button to get protected, and it works on all devices. Phones, laptops, tablets, and more. Just one button, you tap it, you turn it on, you are protected, and you can stay private on the go. You got to use ExpressVPN. One tap, as they say. Whether it's your phone, your laptop. When I'm traveling, when I'm in coffee shops, I like to work in coffee shops on occasion. You switch it on, and you feel much better about your personal information potentially being culled by these public Wi-Fi networks. Protect your online privacy today by visiting expressvpn.com/majority. That's EXPRESSVPN.com/majority. And you can get an extra 4 months free. expressvpn.com/majority. We will put a link below in the description for an extra 4 months free. expressvpn.com/majority. And lastly, this episode is sponsored by Liquid IV. Prepping for a big summer means planning to stay hydrated so you can get the most out of your body and live more during these summer months. Visit liquidiv.com and maximize your summer plans with sugar-free hydration featuring the new Raspberry Lemonade Hydration Multiplier. Get 20% off your first order with code MajorityRep at checkout. I've gotten like my whole family hooked on this thing because Liquid IV is so nice and they sent us a bunch of packets and I'm thinking of handing them out at my wedding, honestly, because they're really good for keeping people hydrated. And it's so small, just one stick that you can just keep in your purse or your wallet and you're good to go. And you can add it to your water, keeps you hydrated with a bunch of different hydration multiplier flavors, from acai berry and lemon lime to pina colada. You can also choose from their line of sugar-free flavors like raspberry lemonade, white peach, and rainbow sherbet. Break the mold and own your ritual. Just one stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. It's powered by Live Hydroscience, an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, clinically tested nutrients that turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. It has 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink. It has 8 essential vitamins and nutrients, always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. Get ready for summer with extraordinary hydration from Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MajorityRep, one word, at checkout. That's 20% off your first order with code MajorityRep at liquidiv.com. And link below, get 20% off your first order at liquidiv.com using the code MajorityRep at checkout. All right, quick break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Taylor Lorenz. We are back, and we are joined now by Taylor Lorenz, tech journalist, author of the best-selling book Extremely Online, The Untold Story of Fame, Influence, and Power on the Internet, host of Power User, the podcast, and founder of the tech and online culture newsletter User Magazine. Taylor, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
So you have this video on your YouTube channel entitled Somebody Needs to Do It, which is a reference to the widespread memes that we do not endorse at all, jokingly referring to Trump's assassination. And we should be abundantly clear, that your analysis isn't endorsing these memes or encouraging them in the slightest. Neither am I. But it is examining like the political fury behind them. And let's just take a listen to a few minutes of your work on this. I really would encourage people to watch the whole video. But I found this section just to be kind of indicative of a lot of what you had to say in the video. And I wanted to play that for a little bit for people. So we'll start here.
About exactly how and when millions of people lost faith in the system. This was not an overnight phenomenon. There were pivotal events over the past few years that pushed people to this moment. And I don't think that you can look at the someone should do it memes without examining the major cultural and political turning points that we've recently lived through. To begin with, we have to go back to March 2020 when COVID hit. And before you tune out, because I said the word COVID, listen to me. The year 2020 is actually a time in history that the entire US government, the mainstream media, and pretty much everyone in power has spent billions and billions of dollars waging a massive propaganda war to try to make you forget. And that propaganda campaign has worked on a lot of you, because the period in time that most of America has memory hold was actually pretty revolutionary. In the early months of spring 2020, when COVID began to spread, the U.S. witnessed a momentary glimpse into a more equitable society. The entire U.S. government was taking care of its people in ways that it hadn't before. The U.S. government has spent so many years since blasting the public with propaganda that a lot of people today have forgotten just how revolutionary 2020 was. Policies that we were always told were absolutely impossible in America suddenly came to fruition. I want to go through a few notable ones. There was the CARES Act, enacted in March 2020, which provided direct financial assistance to struggling workers by extending unemployment benefits and offering an additional $600 per week. The Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which also passed in 2020, mandated paid sick leave and increased funding for food assistance programs, lifting countless people out of poverty. On a state level in 2020, states like New Mexico began offering free childcare, a policy that lifted approximately 120,000 people above the poverty line. The state even began taking budget surplus directly from oil and gas revenue to fund early childhood education. This stuff was so progressive, I actually can't even imagine it happening now, which is again because of the downstream effects of all of this propaganda trying to make us forget this stuff. Other states, including Connecticut, implemented universal free school meal programs, ensuring that all students had access to hot, nutritious meals, regardless of income, for the first time. These policies and dozens more resulted in a significant reduction of food insecurity across America. In 2020, SNAP benefits were increased and helped feed over 15 million young people. From 2020 to 2021, the expansion of food programs across the U.S. resulted in 2.4 million households no longer being food insecure. I can't explain how life-changing this stuff was for millions and millions of people in America. And people weren't just being fed. Millions were also suddenly able to get health care in 2020. The government made it easier than ever to enroll in Medicare and Medicaid, which resulted in millions of people who had been previously unable to afford health insurance suddenly able to get care. The government invested $145 million in expanding telehealth services, meaning millions of disabled and housebound people could finally access care, some for the first time in decades. In 2020, housing insecurity plummeted thanks to federal policies like the Treasury Department's ERA program, which provided over $46 billion to support housing stability for renters. There was a nationwide eviction moratorium, and the government rolled out a suite of tenant protections. California, actually, where I live, helped thousands of previously unhoused people gain access to permanent housing. I don't want to go on too much, but these are just a sliver of the policies that we saw the government enact during the early days of the pandemic. And they showed everyone in America for the first time ever what was actually possible if we allocated just a fraction of the billions and billions and billions of dollars that we spend on the military and things like tax cuts for the rich towards the public good.
So that was just such a phenomenal summation of things that we have, as you say, memory hold about what our politics looked like in that period. Just writing down some of the things that the themes of like what the government provided for people. Increased SNAP, which the Republicans are now slashing. And on a regular month, SNAP, I think, feeds 40 million Americans and helps with their food insecurity. You talk about how 15 million more were added and were allowed to use SNAP to alleviate some of their food insecurity. Healthcare, Medicaid expansion being escalating during that period. States that had previously rejected it because it was Obama socialism needing to do so. Now the Republicans are trying to cut that. Housing, the eviction moratorium. People understanding that like housing doesn't have to be this way. And right now rent is the highest it's ever been in the wake of that. These are just three enormously important elements and of course, COVID with healthcare and the effects of that. Enormously important things in our politics that just within a year, it seemed like the conversation around them, at least for Americans, completely transformed.
Yeah. I mean, but it transformed. And as what I want people to understand is this was intentional. Like, I think a lot of people were so excited to quote unquote get back to normal that they bought into far right pandemic denialism. And essentially, once the vaccines came out, convinced themselves that they wanted to go back to quote unquote normal, as in the world before 2020, and not advocate for any of these ongoing protections, because to advocate for a lot of these ongoing protections would require acknowledging that the pandemic is ongoing, which it is. And they wanted to, and I understand that impulse, but they just sort of retreated back into individualism. And what I try to outline in my video is that this pandemic denialism that frankly has taken hold in the left and among liberals, like very much driven by liberals, and the right, of course, which has always been denialist about the pandemic, sort of set the stage for this like memory holing, and that we should not only acknowledge the ongoing pandemic. We have literally a new variant that people are saying causes razor blade throat right now that's hitting America, but also that, yeah, we should look back at that time and be like, wait a minute, why did we let that stuff end? That was like a good time. And I made this video after seeing a bunch of TikToks, not just about the somebody's got to do it meme, but about nostalgia for 2020 and being like, why is life so hard now? Like, I'm nostalgic for 2020 when like I had it just for like a minute, like a slightly easier.
Right. And when you talk about COVID denialism too, it really, I think, underscores some of these new kind of insidious elements in the Republican Party and in the Trump 2.0 administration. RFK Jr. as a figure, of course, his popularity exploded during that time period. And for me, I have been framing this to people about like, this is because people have a fundamental anxiety about their health care. And I think that anxiety, of course, exploded during COVID. Because we don't guarantee healthcare as a right in this country. And so it leaves the door wide open for charlatans to say, as long as you take my supplement, you're going to be okay, undercutting the notion of public health, because what is public health if we don't have public health care?
Exactly. And I also think like what RFK is just a little bit more extreme version of individualism that frankly the Democrats sold the public on in 2021. In 2020, we had enormous solidarity. There was this idea of, I'm not just masking to protect myself, I'm masking to protect you and other people from this deadly and dangerous airborne disease. Then they sort of gaslit the public into saying masking is a personal choice. We don't get personal air. Airborne disease is real. Air is shared. We could clean the air. We could make sure that schools are safe, workplaces are safe. Now they're banning masks. They won't even let workers protect themselves. COVID and the pandemic is the biggest labor issue of our time. And it has just been ignored to force people back to work in unsafe working conditions. We should have learned lessons about airborne disease and implemented mitigations. And now most people, as you're saying, have this deeply individualistic view of public health where they don't view that it's their responsibility to keep anyone else safe. Like they just want to be able to go about their life and think exactly like you said, if I buy the right supplement, I can sort of like purchase my way, into health. And in some ways you can, right? Obviously, the more money you have, the better health outcomes you have. But getting disease is not good. Getting disease repeatedly, even if you're vaccinated for that disease, is not good. It doesn't build your immune system. It's the opposite. And so I think a lot of people but they've internalized this idea of like, get back to work, don't complain. Sorry that you're sick now 7 or 8 times a year, more than you were before the pandemic because your immune system's been damaged. But, you're not getting, as you mentioned, you're not getting any time off. You're not getting any paid sick leave anymore. And the entire political system has set the stage for that. I don't think RFK could be doing what he could be doing now if Americans weren't already primed to have this individualistic view of health.
And the Philadelphia Whole Foods workers and the Amazon workers who started their unionization efforts in the wake of the pandemic explicitly cited the lack of pandemic protections and COVID protections as something that galvanized them to demand more from their workplace. And you can see a very clear story when you also see the reaction to, how like business owners wanted people to get back to work immediately. And now you're seeing even like punitive measures that are being employed in cities like San Francisco to force people back into the office because, hey, we're concerned about the value of commercial real estate and this high rise is worth this is how capitalism affects public health and people's personal health.
And it's forcing, what drives me crazy is that all these people were so desperate to believe the propaganda that COVID just magically disappeared and somehow isn't harmful anymore. Diseases are harmful. Again, get vaccinated, but being vaccinated does not prevent necessarily unfortunately we don't have sterilizing vaccines, right? So you can still get infected when you're vaccinated. It's very common. We never demanded protections. And as you said, a lot of labor organizers did. I say we as in like the collective public, and many people with large platforms on the left have pushed this denialism. They haven't said, hey, look, our workers will go back to work when you have air filtration, when you have air monitors, when we have paid sick leave, when we have free and easy access to COVID testing and testing for all, measles and all the other diseases that are coming back. Instead, it's just get back to work. And the most insidious thing I've seen with healthcare workers too, where they're forcing healthcare workers back to work without PPE. I was just in the hospital this past weekend, and the doctors were saying that they can't, basically they're encouraged not to wear masks. And they have all these signs that say, we want to see your smile. Disgusting. These are, these are people that are treating immunocompromised people, disabled people. And these healthcare workers are being told, nurses are being told not to mask.
How about the teachers, right? The teachers unions.
Oh my God.
I heard Pete Buttigieg on a podcast. What was it, a few days ago? Maybe we can find that and we can talk. You have it? Oh, there you go, Matt. Thank you. Pete, maybe we just play this because, as you're saying, this is a bipartisan, unfortunately, effort to create this level of denial. This was what Pete Buttigieg said he would change if he could go back in time in 2020. He was on the podcast with that guy, Tim Miller. I'm forgetting the name of his show. But
the Bulwark.
The Bulwark. This answer is disqualifying. Yeah.
We're going to go back to right after Biden gets the nomination in 2020. So, you just endorsed him and you're Pete from today. And you get to talk to Pete from back then. What do you think y'all should have done differently?
One, for the love of God, figure out a way to get the schools open sooner. We got very knee-jerk about this, and the costs were not just politically, but in a profound way. I think for the generation, the costs were profound, and I think anybody who was involved, who was, by the way, obviously doing their best to deal with a crisis that killed a million Americans.
Sure.
But I think most people involved would like to be able to have found a way to safely get more schools open more quickly.
That was a great first answer.
Oh, I'm sure you think that.
Very specific. Find a way.
Yeah.
And I love how he says the first thing that he says is the cost politically.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that he says.
Yep. Go ahead, Taylor. The floor is yours.
It's infuriating because, again, he's feeding into this right-wing narrative that we didn't go further enough. Biden already enacted policies that were further to the right of Trump when he took office. He forced everyone back to work. They misled the public greatly about the vaccines and their ability to sterilize. Like, they said that COVID, you can't get COVID. That was I just want everyone to, Julia Doubleday, who's a fantastic writer. She has The Gauntlet, which is a wonderful Substack that's covered all this. She's really detailed it so well. But and I remember this myself with my job. The reason you were allowed to go back to work if you were vaccinated was because they believed at the time, or who knows how much they knew, but that you could not get COVID if you were vaccinated. So therefore it was safe. By the summer of 2021, we already knew that that was true. And there was rampant breakthrough infections and breakthrough deaths. And there was no reevaluation of the policy. It was just like, no, we said get back to work. And it's like, but you said get back to work because it was safe, and it's not safe. And you're not putting any protections in place, especially in schools, which are a primary driver of COVID spread. Because here's the thing, although children respond to disease slightly better, children still get long COVID. Repeatedly infecting them with a neuroinvasive, immune system damaging virus is not good for a child, even if they're vaccinated, not to mention many parents are not vaccinating their children. But old people work at schools, elderly people, teachers, lunch ladies, administrators, and those kids, when they get sick, they bring disease home and infect and kill their parents or their caregivers or disable them. And so again, we need to stop thinking of deaths. I'm so glad that deaths are down. Of course, we've killed off almost all the most vulnerable people, right, in the early days of the pandemic. But disability...
Because as an aside, Buttigieg points out, 1 million people died.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Just that's an afterthought. And by the way, most of them died under Biden because Biden oversaw the biggest wave of COVID when he just let it rip, when they said vulnerable people will fall by the wayside and die. And there was no public outcry about that. There was no backlash. And I just want to stress, this is why people need to have solidarity with disabled people and recognize this as a labor issue. This is a major workers' rights issue. My brother works at a bar. He got COVID at work. You can't protect yourself when you're working in some of these places. And so we need things like, if you're not going to be able to mask everywhere, right? Like eateries and things, upgrade the ventilation, test. Like there are things we can do to reduce community spread. I'm not saying everyone needs to have an N95 strapped to their face at all time. Again, that's a very individualistic solution. Yes, masking is solidarity. Masking itself is not individualistic. You are, protecting others. But we can't only rely on things like that. We need to have paid sick leave, better health care, and upgraded ventilation and free testing and all of these other things that have made it so that it's safer in other countries than it is here.
Right. And then just to then kind of bring it back overall to some of the other parts of your thesis here, because you're mentioning all of things that the government could do to help the collective, that this could be a country that's not just this bootstraps individualist approach to healthcare, but one that has like government intervention to deal with a crisis. But COVID was a crisis. You had government intervention. You had checks.
It is a crisis.
Is a crisis. I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me on that. It's a crisis. The expansion of the child tax credit, the eviction moratorium, all of those policies showed people what the government could do, right? It was this demonstration of the government's power, where we've been told in this country for quite a while that the government is the problem. And so you also talk about how when that went away and Biden and Joe Manchin, right? Like there was not the prioritization of the extension. Well, Biden did try to extend the child tax credit, but Joe Manchin kills it. And then what can we do? Right. But
kills it in a gross way, like basically trotting out tropes of, the lazy people and stuff like that.
Right. In doing that, basically, kind of put people back into a very difficult situation, which I think you can't tell the story of Trump winning on some sort of like backlash to the economy without telling the story of how a lot of these protections went away. And this bred this level of nihilism in our politics that you also speak about in this video. Can you expand on that dynamic? Because I've, of course, noticed it. And I think without nihilism, you don't have Donald Trump again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that losing, sort of seeing all of this stuff that we could have, right? Because obviously COVID is a crisis, but so is poverty, so is childcare, all of these things that are leading to people having difficult lives was ripped away. And people just started to think, oh, the people in power don't care. There's nothing we can do. And they started to feel defeated. They started to sort of, first, I argue in my video, party away their problems. You see the rise, and I sort of chart it through memes of this time of like, basically retreating into individualism, and also just being like, okay, LOL, nothing matters. Nothing matters. The world is a joke. We all live in hell, which is sort of true, but like, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have solidarity with each other, and like we shouldn't exert our collective power. And I worry that that's where we're going again, because people feel so powerless. And I understand why, because the system is so rigged, right, in so many ways. But I think 2020 is an example of the pressure that we can put, because the media was also putting pressure on the government back then. It was this mass collective pressure to actually hold Trump accountable and to like push for these public, this public response. And I do think that we could replicate that mass public pressure.
And this also was in conjunction with the Black Lives Matter protests too, right? Which was a demonstration of collective action, at least in the streets, even though we didn't have the organizational, density or mechanisms to do what we needed to do to reform policing and to or overhaul it. But that these two kind of planks of 2020 being this collective experience of the beginning of the pandemic and the protests for Black Lives, that how did those two things fit together, and how did they inform the political moment that we're in right now?
Well, what we saw is this, like, as you said, this record movement. It was Black Lives Matter, but also there was a huge surge in environmentalism, the environmental movement. You saw this collective action against Trump, labor organizing. Like, Black Lives Matter was sort of the tip of the iceberg of all of this sort of mass exertion of collective power out in the public, but also online. And that really scared politicians. And so the boot just came down so hard when Biden took action. Not only did he start attacking start like criminalizing these protests in this really dangerous way, but also start trying to regulate the internet. I talk a lot about this on my YouTube channel, but this is when we started to see these crackdowns in online speech, the TikTok ban, things like the Kids Online Safety Act, very poorly named bill that's basically a censorship bill. All of these other things, efforts to reform Section 230, because they started to realize the collective power that we had on the streets and also online. And I think Gaza ended up ultimately just blowing all of this up into like even bigger proportions, because now we've seen like the real crackdown come even harder on speech and on like protests.
And so there's this collective thrust in that period. Then the retraction of the social safety net expansions that we talk about. And then we're giving birth to this era of a bit of nihilism too. Like, you had the GameStop stock thing, but you then have in the years, and I think Gaza and the brutality of the genocide on people's phones caused them to think these like dark thoughts about our government or about what's even possible. Then you also have the rise of the cryptocurrency industry and meme stocks, which is like, okay, if I'm not going to be able to, if the government's not going to provide for me, and it seems like nothing's going to get better, and we're in this apocalyptic genocide accepting climate catastrophe hellhole, I might as well get mine while I can. And that is the epitome of the Trump administration. That's what they're doing in practice, but it's also what they engendered in the public.
Yes. And that is what I want people to understand, because these Democrats especially seem to really be struggling to understand why they lost and how they lost. And it is this like broader sentiment of, like, I hate to say the millennial phrase like YOLO, but it is very like that, like the crypto stuff and just the stuff that you're seeing like in culture, right? It is this like deep nihilism and this deep thing of like, I just need to get mine. And especially when you talk to young people, you hear this. I've reported a lot on the rise of like the e-commerce scams. And, I've been writing a lot about OnlyFans recently. I was talking to an OnlyFans worker last night who has been laid off from their job like 4 times. They've lost like 4 jobs, and service work jobs, and because of all of this sort of broader economic issues. And they're like, you know what, YOLO. Like, I just, not that there's nothing wrong with starting an OnlyFans, but it's like this nihilism of just like, I don't care. I need a get rich quick scheme because nothing is real. And as long as I have money, I have power and control in this country, and I can buy my way into health. I can buy my way into safety. The reality is that nihilism is false. You're not going to be the crypto billionaire. You're going to lose your money. You're not going to be able to buy your way out of disease. I'm sorry. You have a human body just like everyone else, and I just want people to sort of realize that.
Right. And you have the flip side of it, right? Which is that there's this anger that's more productive, but there's nowhere for it to go except for the memes that you're talking about, jokingly about talking about killing billionaires or world leaders. And that's the positive that I see coming out of this, is the anti-billionaire sentiment that those same corners of the Democratic Party that you talk about are trying to currently tamp down by making it like it's really housing reform. It's not the billionaires that you should be mad at. I keep returning to that because there was just a poll that came out, and we'll go through it later, about what voters actually respond to, and it's the obvious one.
Yeah, I don't understand how the Democrats, I don't think they spend time online. But you see these pervasive media, and this is what I talk about in my video too. You can sort of read the sentiment, the broad public sentiment, through the internet very effectively, especially through these mass cultural moments and memes. And I think people are realizing, and I talk about this in the video too, like, the violence is sanctioned by the government. Like, we have witnessed what they've been doing in Gaza. We've witnessed what they've been doing to student protesters. America is a very violent country, and the government is actually totally comfortable with violence. It's just when violence is directed in the wrong direction that they have a problem.
Right.
And so you see this, people are like, all right, well, if violence is okay, then like, why can't we, harm the billionaires that are causing us trouble?
The healthcare CEO.
And that's where you are starting to see more of that, right? Like the Luigi, and just like people taking violence. It feels like the only language that the government speaks. And so they are going to do that because, again, they feel like they have no viable path to reforming the political system because they've been shut out by the Democrats and the Republicans are selling them sort of a false dream. And so there's just a lot of disillusionment.
And lastly, because I know you have to run, Taylor, but like this is where your reporting is so important, is because you have a very good kind of sense of the internet and how that melds into our politics. And you also talk about how 2020 was the year that the almost firewall between the internet and our politics just broke. And I think that the Democrats were really slow to that. I think even the most centrist consultants would agree. But in what manner were they slow to it?
Yeah, they refused to recognize the internet. Biden's entire thing in 2020 was like, the internet isn't real life. I think of, collectives like TikTok for Biden, which is now Gen Z for Change, a collective of hundreds of very influential, highly influential Gen Z TikTokers that came together to get Biden elected. They were like, look, we don't love him. They're very progressive, but we're going to get him elected. Biden thanked him, said they were essential in turning out the youth vote. By the end of 2023, I think almost all of them had been blacklisted from the White House because they were pushing him on things like COVID, Gaza, other climate. And there was this idea of like the internet isn't real life. It's not true. And the Democrats, I would say, they know in their hearts this isn't true because they're pushing some of the most dangerous tech legislation today, trying to censor speech on the internet. And that is one thing that the Democrats have aligned themselves with Trump on very much, is censoring online speech. And I have a series on my YouTube channel called Free Speech Fridays, where I break down all of this bad tech legislation that we're seeing. But they really do want to control the internet. Both political parties want to exert ultimate control over speech online because they don't want people protesting. They don't want people organizing. And that's a shame. I just had Aidan Walker, who's a researcher, on my podcast today, talking about the power. The internet really burst their bubble. It allows us to challenge the mainstream media narratives, challenge the government, and we need to fight for our civil liberties online. And so I would love to see more people, especially on the left, get involved with those fights, because I think a lot of people have been, that's sort of slid under the radar. I know tech policy is not like a fun thing to talk about, but it is people like Richard Blumenthal, Mark Warner, these Democrats, Amy Klobuchar, that are aligning with the right, like people backed by the Heritage Foundation, to censor speech.
Lastly, where do you see this, like, what do you see this like AI slop stuff doing to our politics? Is it overblown that it's like it's fooling people, or is it just like the enshittification of the internet? Like, are you concerned about that generally?
It is the enshittification of the internet. I think some of it's overblown, but I saw actually just, I think it was the Daily Wire or PragerU already using AI generated content from that they made of Gazans. And people before the community knew it was appended to the tweet, people absolutely thought this was real. And so I think, I'm sorry. I think it's going to get really bad. And I know I don't like to be hyperbolic. I'm generally like pretty conservative about like tech moral panics. And I don't think that, I think that we need smart legislation, but I worry that in the midst of all this moral panic about social media and AI, we're allowing the government to pass these broad-based sweeping censorship laws that not only don't address the fundamental problems with our tech ecosystem, but also censor legitimate speech. And so that's what I think we need to be careful on about the AI stuff.
Taylor Lorenz, people should follow your work everywhere they can. Best-selling book, extremely online, The Untold Story of Fame, Influence, and Power on the Internet. Check out the Power User podcast. Check out User Magazine. Check out your YouTube channel for more videos like the one that we previewed today. Taylor, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Can I say one more thing, too? Just
yes.
Really quick. I just want to say, I really made that. I want people to mask. We have a very dangerous new COVID variant hitting the US right now. COVID is not harmless. Long COVID is real. Disabled people, workers, low income people, people of color are the worst hit by COVID's long-term effects. So please mask up. It's solidarity. It's the most basic solidarity that you can do. And you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to wear it every 2 seconds, but please, if you can, even if you just wear it 20% of the time, you're helping to prevent the chain of transmission and helping to prevent the spread of airborne disease. So please.
I appreciate that. And it's a great reminder. So thank you so much, Taylor. Have a good one. All right.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, folks, with that, we're there we are. We're going to wrap up the free part of this program, head into the fun half, where we will take your calls and read your IMs. Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Left Reckoning. I had Sandeep Vaheesan on to talk about the public power. We had him. Actually, you interviewed him on this program a while ago, and maybe I'll ask for his take on what policymakers should do to, let's say, unshackle the productive capacities of our great nation in a way that they aren't right now. So hit the refresh, and so check that out, patreon.com/Left. I had a huge show actually this week. Interviewed Ro Khanna, congressman from California, and also talked with Aaron, aka Straighteraid, who is the person who asked Dave Rubin why he won't debate Sam Seder on the Whatever podcast. I also heard a little bit about the backstory of that show, which was interesting. I think she described it as the white fresh and fit, and it's interesting because they have like 7 young women, like often like OnlyFans or even like porn stars, and they have to sit without their phones. They're not allowed to have their communication devices. And get yelled at by like people like Charlie Kirk about their body counts and stuff like that. So it was an interesting look into the new sort of slop that people are eating up these days. So check that out. That was 7:00 Eastern. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
All right. Do we have Brandon? Bringing him in. We'll read some IMs here. There's Brandon. Hello.
There I am. Here I am. Hello.
Here you are. How you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
I am doing okay. I'm a little stressed, but
I can only imagine.
Yeah, it's for folks that don't know, it's like 2 weeks and change until my wedding, and so I was off yesterday, and I'm just on the phone the whole day. There's so much stuff to worry about, and it's and at the same time, I'm doing MSNBC. We're gonna end at 2:30. Actually, if people want to check me out on the Katie Tur show. So I'm getting invited. I'm trying to say yes to everything. So it's very much, it's a when it rains it pours situation.
You are having an emotional breakdown right now.
Shouldn't complain too much, but I'm going to cry into my pillow tonight. And I'm trying not to drink any wine at all, like for the next few weeks, because I'm like, wedding body or whatever. And I don't even have my release. It's really, really horrible. So instead, I'm just ordering a lot of ramen.
Speaking of a guy who had trouble laying off the alcohol.
Oh, yeah. God, I just want my one weekday wine, but I'm denying it to myself. We'll see how long I last. Brandon.
Now, the proof will be in the pudding, and I'm sure I will understand everything that's happening.
See, I missed this one.
2 weekends from now.
Ayo, what's happening on your shows?
Well, my show/stream has been going every morning, so I would heavily encourage people to tune in from around 9 a.m. EST to around 12 p.m. EST. I know a lot of people listen to me on their way to work in the morning, when they're like pretending to work in the morning while the sleep is still falling off their eyes.
I want to check if I'm missing anything for the majority report, so I'll put on a little bit of the discourse in the background before the show.
Oh no, I mean, I don't think I'm anywhere near as comprehensive in my coverage as the majority report with Sam Seder, but I like to mix it up. I think we do a good mix of news and like cultural commentary and just like diving into the real underbelly of content on the internet. So definitely check it out. It's The Discourse with Brandon Sutton on your favorite streaming platforms. And by that, I mean Twitch and YouTube. If it's somewhere else, then I'm not there.
Perfect. We now have Matt Binder. Hello, Matt.
Hello, how are you?
Now? What's going on?
What? Huh?
New hairstyle.
New hairstyle.
No, this is the same as always. Just maybe I put it the wrong a different way.
It was like almost over your eye. It was very 2003 emo
no, I didn't
boy.
notice. It's just what do you want me to do with it? It's just making me all red.
Well, count yourself blessed. You've got a full head of hair. What's happening over on your shows?
So on Tuesday night, I had a stream, call-in show. People called in. Also, we watched clips from, I know you guys did too, Jordan Peterson's appearance on the Jubilee.
Yep.
Oh
it
my
was
God.
pretty great.
Oh yeah. I mean, wow. I mean, if I was some of those young men who spoke with him, I would feel like $1 million having a clip like that on my resume.
Unbelievable.
Pretty much every one of them, like a lot of them made points that I just found kind of like not that interesting and a bit hard to follow and too philosophical.
Yeah.
But to their credit, the way that they did it was dominant. It was dominant performance of a man who clearly has not argued with online atheists for a long time, because those are people you do not fuck with.
Right.
Like they are all about the logic. These are people that like they read a book about logic and argumentation. Like I know that because I'm somebody who used to have like a Richard Dawkins t-shirt. I can't remember what the book I read, but it was like how to like it's something about fallacies, and it's like, okay, you train yourself for this type of thing. I prefer this sort of style of the two guys we played, which is like, hey, the whole thing about how most people believe in God? Do you believe in God like that? And he's like, well, oh gosh, I don't know. I guess I have to run away.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was as if, I guess I'm not shocked that the dude was so arrogant that he didn't prepare anything, but he also, it seems like he didn't even read the email about what they said they were going to present him as, because he got so squirrely about being called a Christian. Do people who are yeah.
They changed the title of the video for him.
I know, but like, if you're of a faith, who just like, why can't you just say it? It's the caginess is so much more harmful to anything he could be doing here than if he just admitted what his religion was.
Well, if he admitted as religious, he would have to say like he looks at it from like an academic philosophical way that most people who believe in God, who are Christians, don't. They don't think like, oh, this is because I need to develop some sort of relationship with the infinite because we're all going to die at some point. It's because they think there's a God that made them,
right,
and is going to judge them whether they can go to heaven and hell. Jordan Peterson literally does not believe that. Whatever you define believe to believe, Jordan Peterson does not believe.
So what is he like? He's culturally Christian?
He's professionally Christian.
I think like a lot of people, he likes the fact that you can reference Christianity for like moral authority, and he also associates Christianity very heavily with like Western supremacy. Like Christianity is a core component of like the Western imperialist project in a lot of places, and so those are the parts of Christianity that he likes. I don't think he is quite so far gone as to not recognize that calling yourself a Christian kind of devalues your opinion in more like serious spaces, because you're coming from like a, not a scientific perspective. You're coming from like a religious, supernatural perspective.
But the whole like era of faux intellectualism on the right is over. So maybe just admit that you believe in like, I don't know.
Now it's just
spirits.
Like Russell Brand and Joe Rogan can be like, yeah, I believe in God too, bro.
But it's why, like, I mean, yeah, also Ben Shapiro's on the outs, because it feels like the Republican base doesn't care about any intellectual veneer anymore.
Pretense, yeah.
Yeah, like we're good. They're feeling themselves. All right, guys, we're going to head into the fun half. The number is 646-257-3920, but don't call in yet. I'll let you know when you should. We'll open up the phone lines on the other side. See you there.
Okay, Emma, please.
Well, I feel that my voice is sorely lacking on the majority report.
Wait, look, Sam is unpopular.
I do deserve a vacation at Disney World. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome Emma to the show.
It is Thursday.
I think you need to take over for Sam.
Yes, please.
No. I'm gonna pause you right there.
Wait, what?
You can't encourage Emma to live like this. And I'll tell you why. So was offered to tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. So was offered to tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
What?
Tour, sushi, and poker.
Tim's upset.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. So was offered to tour, sushi, and
that's what we call the biz.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Right.
Tour, sushi, and poker.
We're gonna get demonetized.
I just think that what you did to Tim Pool was mean.
Free speech.
That's not what we're about here. Look at how sad he's become now. You shouldn't even talk about it. I think you're responsible.
I probably am in a certain way, but let's get to the meltdown here.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Oh my God.
Tour,
wow.
Sushi. I'm sorry, I'm losing my fucking mind. So was offered a tour, sushi, and